Hi, I'm Kendra Corman. If you're a coach, consultant, or marketer, you know marketing is far from a perfect science. And that's why this show is called Imperfect Marketing. Join me and my guests as we explore how to grow your business with marketing tips and, of course, lessons learned along the way. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Imperfect Marketing. I'm your host, Kendra Corman, and I'm excited today to be talking about CRM optimization and customer marketing strategy with our guest today, Paul. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Kendra, thanks for having me. Looking forward to today's conversation.
All right, so how'd you get into this? The question I love to ask people.
Yeah, it's a good question. I actually started out as a musician and in the music world, and that's really that was my entry into marketing in general and how I came to get into marketing. I really started out thinking, I really want to be in the music world and the music products world, and that's really where I got, started my life. And I've been a musician pretty much my whole life, and really how I got to getting into marketing is that the music world is such a creative space. When you are a musician, you're in that space, you get a lot of times playing with spending time and thinking about creativity, but honing my skills as a musician, there was so much time that you really start to think about some of the more quantitative and sort of as left brain types of things. And that's really where, in evolving from going in the music products world, I started to get into consulting from there. And in getting into consulting, you're faced with so many just different types of industries and verticals and things like that. And coming from the music side of things, I realized that it's not just creativity in music, which I love. It's not just that where I like to spend all my time in. I love to think about problem solving and learning how different people solve for their customer. And I think that's really where how I evolved from going in the music and art side of things and then going into the consulting side of things. And in consulting, once you're in that side, there's so many different, that can mean a lot of different things, but I really evolved from working really at a small SEO type of shop and evolved to where, and we'll get into this later, to doing full funnel types of marketing. And that's really what I spend my time doing today.
Okay, that is so interesting. So I told Paul before, I said, by the way, I have my guests introduce themselves now because their story is way more interesting than me reading their bio. And that is way more interesting than me reading any bio. So that is so cool that you made the connection from something that you were super passionate on and that it connected you with something that makes you money and that you're hopefully passionate about too. So very cool. Thank you for sharing that. I had just had a conversation with a client earlier today and they were talking about a CRM. I need a CRM. And I was like, okay, why? We started getting into those questions. But CRMs are important and in marketing. So since you do a lot of CRM optimization, what are some of the mistakes that you're seeing when people are implementing CRMs?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think that so often when companies are thinking about implementing their CRM or a new CRM is they really jump to starting with the technology first and thinking, oh, all of my competitors, they use this CRM, so I got to use the exact same one. And there's so many companies that fall into that. And it's really I think the biggest mistake is instead of jumping to picking out a CRM right away, you need to think about your own process, your strategy, and your goals. There's many great CRM systems out there, but it's before you just say, oh, I'm going to get this one, it's well, what are you trying to solve for first? Because once you can think about what that goal is, then from there, you can, you choose the right tool set based on and kind of work your way backwards instead of picking a CRM and then force fitting your business structure and strategy around that. So that's what I think that's the big mistake first. Second, I would say is data hygiene. Big challenge and that I see so many clients have is they're using a CRM system and they just want to lift and shift all of their data into the new system. And I think when you're migrating and implementing a CRM, it's your opportunity to think about, does you have the current accurate proper data structure for where your business is today, not where it was 10 years ago when you implemented your last CRM system. So I think data hygiene is one area is that if you don't take the time to fix it before you move to your new system, or at least address it to some degree, you end up with a bit of the same sort of headaches that you had in your last system. When you think about where we're going from an AI perspective, it's all about high quality data. And if you're like, AI can solve for a lot of like data hygiene issues, but if you have conflicting data, if you just have a lot of data poor practices from back in the day, like your AI and the outputs that you're getting from AI are going to be reflected in what you're getting from that new system.
Yeah, I mean, first off, on the data hygiene, it is so important and it is so overlooked. Even I know small business owners that don't even have a CRM system, just have an email marketing system, and their data hygiene in their email marketing system isn't even good, right? I mean, it's just data gets out of control. I was the Jeep advertising manager like a lifetime ago, and we had data problems. Right? I mean, it's like it doesn't matter like how big or how small you are. I think everybody has data issues because you only clean it up so often because it is a pain in the butt and nobody wants to do it. So I love that. But let's go back to the first point that you talked about, and that was starting with the technology. And you said you should start with goals first, and your processes and your business and your strategy. What are some examples or questions that somebody should be asking themselves to get some of those answers? Because I find a lot of people start with the technology because that's easier.
It's a good point. And there's a lot of great CRM systems out there. So it's easy to just say, it's easy to just jump onto the flashiest new AI-powered system out there. But I think the questions that I like to ask is, when you think about you as a business 3 to 6 months from now, what does success look like? And I think if you ask that question, it's like, well, ideally, this team is managing these kinds of deals and the new inquiry comes in and then this is how they're going to manage it. And then from there, it goes to customer success or whatever it is. And so like, I think you ask those types of questions. And, my favorite things to do is like get your marketing team and your sales team in the same room and you map this out together. And I think by doing that, get together in person, like actually in real life, like spend the money, get together, map it out on a whiteboard. Everybody gets to like see, what are the most important parts of it and where are the breakdowns happening today. That's the key to like doing the proper implementation, is really mapping out what does that flow need to look like from initial inquiry all the way to like when someone's a customer, and you can even map out during the customer success process as well. But I think those are some of like the first questions that I always ask my clients.
If you're not looking at what success looks like in the future and how you want your processes to go, no CRM is going to fix that, right? If you don't know the answer to those questions, that I don't think you need a CRM yet, right? A lot of people I talk to, they're like, "Oh, I need a CRM." I'm like, "Why? What are you going to do with it?" And they don't always have an answer. So why are you encouraging people to have a CRM? What actions are they going to take with it to grow their business?
What I see today is like, especially when we're starting to work with like SMB, really small types of clients, is they might only have all of their customer information. And it is like it's in spreadsheets and it's in an email tool like MailChimp, or it's like like an emailing tool or an SMS tool. And like they just have sort of information stored in a lot of different places. And the important point of like having a CRM system is that if you have a single source of truth for all of your data, for your customers, for all the transactions that they have, for the companies that those customers work for all the support tickets that they may have as a customer, if you have all that information in one place, you just have a much more complete look at the customer. And if you don't have that, like your people across your organization are making assumptions, or they're spending a lot of time, hours a day, piecing the full picture together. And that's why I think like it's so important to have all that information ingested by a single system. So you have that single view of the customer. You know the date that they came in, what channel they came in from, all the conversations that they had with your sales team, what products that they're using today, and you ideally know what products that they're going to need 3 months from now, next year. And having all that information in one place is like the ultimate dream. And that's why customers that take it seriously, they're the ones that can have that complete view of the customer at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. So when people don't have this, they're not investing in their customer specific marketing, right? And they're losing out on money. How is this affecting their bottom line? How are they losing out?
Yeah, I mean, customers that underinvest in setting up their CRM or underinvest in customer marketing specifically, that's another area we spend a lot of time in. They're like so often the culture of like how they're investing in is they're just investing in like net new customer acquisition and net new logos. And that's really an important part in most marketing teams. That's where they do a majority of their investment goes into net new logo acquisition. But the organizations that are under investing in customer marketing, like they're missing out on so much additional recurring or ongoing revenue and social proof that they could be building if they were to invest in customer marketing. And one of the reasons why that organizations way under invest in customer marketing is because it's harder to measure. It's harder to attribute recurring revenue back to that customer market, those customer marketing efforts. Two, like there's a cultural shift that you have to make to start investing in customer marketing. And it's like, you have to think about like, hey, like your existing clients that they're paying you today. Like you need to think about like how can you provide more value to them, and how can you share those stories and case studies and things like that on your own channels, which at the end of the day, like that type of social proof is some of the most impactful type of marketing you can do. But I think that's really where marketing organizations, they very much underinvest on it, because it's a short-term thinking type of thing. It's like Google Ads, like you stick $20 in, you get $100 out, or you get whatever that ratio is. And I think it's that type of calculation is a lot harder when it comes to customer marketing.
Okay. So you talked about customer marketing, about reaching out to them, to having these conversations, retaining them, and then the social proof stories. So I love the social proof. The key thing there is, how do you truly get that? So I was just actually talking to somebody last week, and they were saying that they were trying to get stories out of people. They can't get anything out of anybody. And if they do, it's just bland, middle, run-of-the-road, watered-down stuff. Do you work with people on how to get that?
Again, it takes building a culture from this. And you almost need to think of building a case study pipeline like you do like a deal pipeline or an opportunity pipeline. At SmartBug, we think about building, like we want to be launching 2-3 case studies a month of this type of social proof. And what it takes is like talking with the account managers on an ongoing basis to get to some of those stories from them. Like, what was this thing you guys launched? What was that campaign like that you guys launched this last quarter? And then thinking about, okay, they launched some new project that, like this quarter, and maybe next quarter, once the fruit is starting to bear from, we're starting to get results from this, then you start to share some of those stories. And so we think about it as like building a pipeline of case studies, because we know for the next few quarters what those are going to look like. And I think if you think proactively about that, it's easier to plan. You're not looking at a blank white page. What are we going to write about today? What's our case study this month going to be about? You're constantly thinking about and you're feeling that. But I think the stories part, it's like the marketing team has to have good relationships with the customer or the account managers, the customer success managers. I think that's the important part, and constantly be spending time with them, like talking about their customers and learning about that. And and it can't just be like a sort of like a one and done thing. Like they need to be spending time together. Like put a recurring monthly meeting or a quarterly meeting with the CSM, so that like you can just talk about their customers. Where are they winning? Like what are they doing well? And I think those are some points where you can start to get some interesting nuggets, and it's not just like the same case study kind of regurgitated over and over.
I really like that, because if you don't do this intentionally, it's not going to happen. And I think people really forget about that. And they think, oh, I can get that later. Or, oh, here's what this person said. And, oh, I'll ask them for, a quote later. And it's like, you can't ask people, I don't think, always to fill in the blanks. You really need to do that for them after you get that core information, because people are, I'm going to say inherently lazy, but they are, right? You're just not a priority to them. So the best way to get what you need is to get what you need in a timely manner, right? And having that pipeline, I think, is really important. When you're creating that pipeline, are you like, is it just recurring tasks? Is it just part of expectations of certain roles? Is it something that pops up in the CRM system as a task to follow up with a client? How does that work for you guys?
I'll give you a little pro tip on this. So in terms of like building a case study pipeline, if you can connect that with like your review building or review generation campaign, they kind of can tie together. And so how I think about it is like when a customer gets a win, that's when you like you've helped them launch a very successful campaign. That's when you ask for that 5-star review. And if you've gotten that 5-star review, they left it on whatever channels that are important for your audience. From there, okay, they're the sort of like your prospects for case studies, because they've already shown that, like, they've already told the internet that you do good work for them. From there, you can then take it to the next step and say, hey, like, you left us a great review from this. We'd love to feature you as a customer story. And then from there, then they're sort of a prospect in your case study pipeline to then nurture them to the point where they're like, yeah, let's do it. And then, like, ideally, like, at the end of the day, like, the customer will let you use their logo and say, let you use their name on your case study. Like, that's ideal to have like third-party logos, that type of social proof on there. But you're going to hit the points where customers are like, can't use my logo, legal team says no, but you can still use that story, an anonymized version of it. Like, you can still like share that type of stuff, and it still does provide a level of value to people that may consider using you in the future. And so that's kind of how we think about it, is like, we need to keep fueling this pipeline regardless of like what the end point is going to be. We got to get customer stories out the door.
And I love that. I love how, starting with reviews, those are people that are already open to it, right? And them sort of opting in to maybe answering more questions is really, really helpful, right? So that's fantastic. If somebody is looking to start or elevate, because we'll say that they've been phoning in their customer marketing, right? They've been totally phoning it in because their data hygiene might be a mess, or they have the wrong tool, or it's set up in an incorrect way. What are like the first 3 things that you would recommend that they do, or what's the first thing that you would recommend that they do to really look at that and get started with it?
What we like literally did was build a pipeline in our CRM for case studies. So like that's a good like foundational area, is to like think about it like structurally. Okay, what are the stages that you need to go through to get to do case studies? Because it's not just like, it's a sales process in its own to like convince a customer to like spend 10, 15, 30 minutes with you doing an interview, writing the case study, them approving it, multiple levels of approval, and then publishing, all that kind of stuff. So you need to think like the process a little bit, like what is that going to look like for you and your customers? But from there, it's like when you start working with a new client, obviously they hired you to make them successful or solve a problem for them. And I think like framing it early on, even during those first few meetings with like discovery meetings with a client when they come on board, is like talking with them like, look, we want to make you the most successful client for us, and be able to share your story one day. Like that is, we both have aligned interests in making that happen. You being very successful and us sharing that with the world that you guys are very successful. And so I think it's setting it up, like thinking about that process, mapping that out, and then like baking it in very early and setting those expectations with your CSM, that it's like with your CSM and account managers, it's not just about like retention and like keeping them around. Like that's the most important thing, is like they keep paying their bill every month or however often you bring in revenue. But like that building that social proof is like, that should be an expectation for your CSMs as well. And at the end of the day, it's like you're going to see your CSMs who are very successful, who retain their clients, who generate 5-star reviews, who build case studies for their clients. And those are the ones who are like, they're going to be rewarded the most handsomely. And so that's kind of like how you think about it, is like building that into like the CSM's like job description, is that it's not just about like kicking clients off and like just serving them the product. It's like you need to like think about how at the end of the day, like they're going to be involved in like the social proof building to some degree.
I really like that, because people want to see that social proof. You can't build your business without it, right? So, I mean, you're not going to be able to scale your revenue or your business or any of that without that social proof piece. And I think that that's really important. And I think it's regularly overlooked, because it can be a pain in the butt to try and get and secure and, you know what I mean, and build that pipeline, especially when you're getting started, if you don't have a pipeline, right? And so I think that that's really important. This has been awesome. I love it. I love talking about CRMs. I love talking about processes and data management, probably because I can't build a flowchart to save my life. But I love it because it's something that I need and can leverage when I'm using data, right? To create campaigns and to reach out, and even, in segment lists, and to, for email and all of the good things that come from having good quality data. And that always starts with a CRM. And Again, it starts with your goals, not the technology, which I love, the tool, I should say, which I love that you mentioned that. Before I let you go, though, I do have to ask you the question I ask all of my guests, and that is, this show is called Imperfect Marketing. Marketing is anything but a perfect science. What has been your biggest marketing lesson learned along the way?
The biggest lesson that I've learned along the way is especially early in my career, was sort of finding what my marketing superpower was right away. And I didn't know this was so important, but as I kind of reflect in the last 15 years in doing marketing, it's you need to be thinking about whatever stage of your career you are, is what is your superpower that people are going to go to you for that. Early on in my career, I started in search marketing, doing SEO and PPC, and really honing those skills, understanding, the things that worked well and didn't for clients, understanding how search engines worked, everything like that. And when I went to my next role, I moved over to HubSpot. I was the SEO guy. I was the person that was people had a customer that had an SEO issue. They'd hit me up and they'd bring me onto their customer calls, and that was figuring out what that superpower was early. Helped me then frame out how I could then maybe lead trainings internally for that. Be the SME when sales needed somebody that could speak to that sort of thing. That has evolved over time too. It's I'm not 15 years later still the SEO guy. I can still answer SEO and things like that, but it's I'm constantly thinking about what thing can I really drill in deep and be that subject matter expert. So when people come to have a training need or a sales need or servicing need or anything like that, it's they know who they can go to and trust. And that has evolved over time. It started at search, then it became, Paul's the HubSpot expert for this thing, and now it's continuing to evolve with all the AI stuff that's happening. And I'm trying to really think about how can I specialize in learning agentic AI, so when people have clients that are interested in that area, they have someone they can go to. So I think it's learning along the way and continuing to hone in on what your superpower is at any one time, I think is just ups your market value. And it's something that, I would encourage a marketer at any stage of their career to be thinking about what their superpower is.
Well, I think all business owners in general should think about what their superpower is. I mean, what you're talking about there is what you're going to represent and stand for, at least for a period of time. Again, like you said, it can evolve over time, which is totally fine. And actually, it probably should, right? I haven't seen a switchboard operator in a really long time, but it was a really important service back in the day. So again, when you're looking at what your superpower is, I think it's even more than just what your marketing superpower is. What's your business? What's your specialty, no matter where you are, and if that's your business, because that's what you stand for. That's where people start to call you. That's where you start getting the speaking gigs and being a guest on podcasts and really building a reputation for yourself in that area and specialty, which I think that just can carry on so much and go so big, that is a fantastic lesson learned. So I think everybody can take something from that, starting with their personal superpower all the way up to like their business, their corporate. How are you making a difference, right? What do you know? What is it that you're really good at? And what's that difference that you can make? Because I really do think that that's what's going to differentiate you, either your personal brand or your company's brand overall, right? And that's what we want to do, is stand out in the marketplace and be remembered for something, ideally, right? So that is so awesome. Thank you so much for your time today. For those of you listening or watching and you want to connect with Paul at SmartBug Media, we have his information in the show notes or the video description down below. So be sure to check that out. Definitely connect with him because he's got a lot of value to share, as you've seen. If you've learned anything today and got some value out of today's podcast, it would really help us out if you would rate and subscribe wherever you're listening or watching. Until next time, have a great rest of your day.